Hello guys, it's your boy Popcorn here with a live reading to Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I'm going to be doing at least 3 chapters from chapter 5, 6 and 7 in this stream. That's my goal. If I'm feeling up for it, I'll read maybe another chapter, but I'm at least going to read chapters 5, 6 and 7. This is the most reading I've done on a YouTube video. And the most I've ever done out loud in one go. I often read in my head. So I'm not used to reading out loud, and the voices sound better in my head, but than they do out in person. I get told my Hagrid is really goddamn awful from my brother, and I have to agree with him. I mean, I try my best, but I'm not very good at personations. But I'm doing the best I can, and hopefully you guys can appreciate that. I won't be talking too much, and I won't be checking the chat really, apart from maybe after each chapter, maybe, or maybe halfway through, probably at the end of each chapter. That way I can keep it flowing. I'll just do a quick check on the chat now before we start. No, not that one. I want this one here. Got one viewer. Hello to the viewer. Hopefully you're doing well today. Um, So yeah, hopefully you're doing well today. Let me know if you're doing good and whatnot before I start. Anyway, last time on the chapter on Harry Potter, we learned that Harry was a wizard, and that the Dursleys were keeping it from Harry all these years, and that they lied about how Harry parents died as well, and we learn about an evil sorcerer slash wizard known as Lord Voldemort, also known as He Who Shall Not Be Named. Who is this sorcerer? Who knows? But let's find out. I'll do one last quick check on the chat just before we start, and then afterwards I'll check the chat after each chapter. Nothing in the chat, no problem. Anyway, before we get going, guys, don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and smash that notification icon as well to stay up to date whenever I release a new video. I post every single day, or at least try to post every single day. So you've got that to look forward to, and don't forget to check out my other series if you're interested. But without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 5: Diagon Alley. Harry woke early the next morning. Although he could not tell it was daylight, he kept his eyes shut tight. It was a dream, he told himself firmly. I dreamed a giant called Hagrid came to tell me I was going to a school for wizards. When I open my eyes, I'll be at home in my cupboard. There was suddenly a loud tapping noise, and there's Aunt Petunia knocking on the door, Harry thought, his heart sinking. But he still didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. Tap, tap, tap. All right, Harry mumbled. I'm getting up. He sat up, and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off him. The hut was full of sunlight. The storm was over. Hagrid himself was asleep on the collapsed sofa, and there was an owl rapping its claw on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Harry scrambled to his feet, so happy he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open. The owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered onto the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. Don't do that! Harry tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on savaging the coat. Hagrid! Said Harry loudly. There's an owl! Pay him! Hagrid grunted into the sofa. What? He wants paying for delivering the paper. Look in the pockets. Hagrid's coat seemed to be made of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, mint, humbugs, tea bags. Finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins. Give him 5 knuts, said Hagrid sleepily. Knuts? The little bronze ones. Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the L held out his leg so he could put the money into a small leather pouch tied to it. Then it flew off through the open window. Hagrid yawned loudly, sat up, and stretched. Better be off, Harry. Lots to do today. Got to get up to London and buy all your stuff for school. Harry was turning over the wizard coins and looking at them. He had just thought of something which made him feel as though the happy balloon inside of him had a puncture. Hagrid? Said Hagrid, who was pulling on his large boots. I haven't got any money. And you heard Uncle Vernon last night. You won't pay for me to go and learn magic. Don't worry about that, said Hagrid, standing up and scratching his head. Don't you think your parents didn't leave you anything? But if the house was destroyed, they didn't keep their gold in the house, boy. Nah, first stop for us is Gringotts, Richard's Bank. Have a sausage. You're not bad, cold. I wouldn't say no to a bit of your birthday cake neither. Wizards have banks? Just the one, Gringotts, run by goblins. Harry dropped the bit of sausage he was holding. Goblins? Yeah, you'd be mad to try and rob it. I tell you that. Never mess with goblins, Harry. Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything you want to keep it safe, except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I've got to visit Gringotts anyway, for Dumbledore. Hogwarts business. Hagrid drew himself up proudly. He usually gets me to do important stuff for him, fetching you, getting things from Gringotts. Knows you can trust me, see? Got everything? Come on then. Harry followed Hagrid out onto the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunlight. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, with a lot of water in the bottom after the storm. How did you get here? Harry asked, looking around for another boat. Flew, said Hagrid. Flew? Yeah, we'll go back in this. Not supposed to use magic now I got ya. They settled down in the boat. Harry was still staring at Hagrid, trying to imagine him flying. Seems a shame to row, though, said Hagrid, giving Harry another of his sideways looks. If I was to, speed things up a bit, would you not mind mentioning it at Hogwarts? Of course not, said Harry, eager to see more magic. Harry pulled out the pink umbrella again, tapped it twice on the side of the boat, and they sped off towards land. Why would you be mad to try and rob Gringotts? Harry asked. Spells, enchantments, said Hagrid, unfolding his newspaper as he spoke. They say there's dragons guarding the high security vaults, and then you gotta find your way out. Gringotts is hundreds of miles under London Sea, deep under the underground. You'd be die of hunger trying to get out, even if you did manage to get your hands on something. Harry sat and thought about this while Hagrid read his newspaper, The Daily Prophet. Harry had learned from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone while they did this. But it was difficult. He never had so many questions in his life. Ministry of Magic's messing things up as usual, Hagrid muttered, turning the page. There's a Ministry of Magic? Harry asked, before he could stop himself. Of course, said Hagrid. They wanted Dumbledore for minister, of course, but he'll never leave Hogwarts, so old Cornelia Fudge got the job. Bungalow if there ever was one. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning asking for advice. But what does a Ministry of Magic do? Well, their main job is to keep it from the muggles that there's still witches and wizards up and down the country. Why? Why? Blimey, Harry. Everyone will be wanting magic solutions to their problems. Nah, we're best left alone. At this moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbour wall. Hagrid folded up his newspaper and they clambered out, up the stone steps and onto the street. Passers-by stared a lot at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as anyone else, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things, like parking meters, and saying loudly, See that, Harry? Things these muggles drink up, hey? Hagrid, said Harry, panting a bit as he ran to keep up. Did you say there are dragons at Gringotts? Well, so they say, said Hagrid. Crikey, I like a dragon. You like one? Wanted one ever since I was a kid. Here we go. They reached the station. There was a train to London in 5 minutes' time. Hagrid, who didn't understand Muggle money, as he called it, gave the notes to Harry, so he could buy their ticket. Phil stared more than ever on the train. Hagrid took up 2 seats and sat knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent. "Still got you there, Harry?" he asked as he counted stitches. Harry took the parchment envelope out of his pocket. "Good," said Hagrid. "There's a list there of everything you need." Harry unfolded a second piece of paper he hadn't noticed the night before and read, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First year students will require 1. 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 2. 1 plain pointed hat, black, for day wear. 3. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar. 4. 1 winter cloak, black, silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Set books. All students should have a copy of each of the following: The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, by Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic, by Berthilda Bagshot. Magical Theory, by Adalbert Ruffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, by Emmerich Switch. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi, by Philida Spore. Magical Drafts and Potions, by Arigens Jigger. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, by Newt Scamander. The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection, by Quentin Trimble. I have to say, what the hell are these names? Sorry, I don't like interrupting, but those names are hard to pronounce. Other equipment: 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter standard size 2, 1 set glass of crystal phials, 1 telescope, 1 set brass scales. Students may also bring an owl, or a cat, or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. "Can we buy all this in London?" Harry wondered aloud. "If you know where to go," said Hagrid. Harry had never been to London before. Although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going, he was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck in the ticket barrier on the Underground and complained loudly that the seats were too small and the trains too slow. "I don't know how the Muggles managed without magic," he said as they climbed a broken down escalator which led up to a bustling road lined with shops. Hagrid was so huge that he parted the crowd easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him. He passed bookshops, music stores, hamburger bars, and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if it could sell you a magic wand. This was just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizard gold buried miles beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spell books and broomsticks? Might this not all be some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursleys had no sense of humour, he might have thought so. Yet somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him so far was unbelievable, Harry couldn't help trusting him. "This is it," said Hagrid, coming to a halt. "The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place." It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have noticed it was there. The people hurrying by didn't glance at it. Their eyes slid from the big bookshop on one side to the record shop on the other, as if they couldn't see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that only he and Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was very dark and shabby. A few old women were sitting in a corner, drinking tiny glasses of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was talking to the old barman, who was quite bald and looked like a gummy walnut. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. They waved and smiled at him, and the barman reached for a glass, saying, "The usual, Hagrid?" "Can't, Tom. On Hogwarts business," said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder and making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the barman, peering at Harry. Can this be?" The Leaky Cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old barman. "Harry Potter, what an honour!" He hurried out from behind the bar, rushed towards Harry, and seized his hand, tears in his eyes. Welcome back, Mr. Potter. Welcome back. Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with the pipe was puffing on it without realising it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. Then there was a great scraping of chairs, and next moment Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the liquid cauldron. Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter. Can't believe I'm meeting you at last. So proud, Mr. Potter. I'm just so proud. Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all of a flutter. Delighted, Mr. Potter. Just can't tell you. Diggle's the name. Diddler's Diggle. I've seen you before, said Harry, as Diggle's top hat fell off in excitement. You bowed to me once in a shop. He remembers, cried Diggler's Diggle, looking around at everyone. Did you hear that? He remembers me. Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for more. A pale young man made his way forward, very nervously. One of his eyes was twitching. Professor Quirrell, said Hagrid. Harry, Professor Quirrell will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts. Potter, stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you. What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell? The defence against the dark arts, muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he thought rather not think about it. No, what you need Potter, he laughed nervously. You'll be getting all your equipment, I suppose. I've got to pick up a new book on vampires myself. He looked terrified at the very thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It took almost 10 minutes to get away from them all. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the babble. Much get on, lots to buy. Come on, Harry. Doris Crockford shook Harry's hand one last time, and Hagrid led him through the bar and out into a small walled courtyard, where there was nothing but a dustbin and a few weeds. Hagrid grinned at Harry. Told you, didn't I? Told you were famous. Even Professor Quirrell was trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's always trembling. Is he always that nervous? Oh, yeah, poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine while he was studying out of books, but then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say you met vampires in the Black Forest, and there was a nasty bit of trouble with a hag. Never been the same since. Scared of the students, scared of his own subjects. Now, where's me umbrella? Vampires? Hags? Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in the wall above the dustbin. 3 up, 2 across, he muttered. Right, stand back, Harry. He tapped the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick he had touched quivered, wriggled in the middle. A small hole appeared. It grew wider and wider. A second later, they were facing an archway, large enough even for Hagrid, an archway onto a cobbled street which twisted and turned out of sight. Welcome, said Hagrid, to Diagon Alley. Right, I need a bit of a drink, and I'll go check the chat. Let me just check the chat. Nothing in the chat by the looks of it. Okay. Right. A bit more of my drink. He grinned at Harry's amazement. They stepped through the archway. Harry looked quickly over his shoulders and saw the archway shrink instantly back into a solid wall. The sun shone brightly on a stack of cauldrons outside the nearest shop. Cauldrons, all sizes, copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring. Copperside, said a sign hanging over them. You'll be needing one, said Hagrid, but we've got to get your money first. Harry wished he had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as he walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside an apothecary was shaking her head as they passed, saying, Dragon liver, 16 sickles an ounce? They're mad! A low, soft hooting came from a dark shop with a sign saying Apple's Owl Emporium, Tawny, Screech, Barn, Brown and Snowy. Several boys of about Harry's age had their noses pressed against a window with broomsticks in it. Look, look, Harry heard one of them say. The new Nimbus 2000, fastest ever. There are shops selling robes, shops selling telescopes and strange silver instruments Harry had never seen before. Windows stacked with barrels and bat splings and eels, eyes, torturing piles of spellbooks, quills and rolls of parchment, potion bottles, globes of the moon, Gringotts, said Hagrid. And he had reached a snowy white building, which towered over the other little shops. Standing beside it, burnished brown doors, wearing a uniform of scarlet and gold, yeah, that's a goblin, said Hagrid quietly, as they walked up the little white stone steps towards him. The goblin was about a head shorter than Harry. He had a swarthy, clever face, a pointed beard, and Harry noticed very long fingers and feet. He bowed as they walked inside. Now they were facing a second pair of doors, silver this time, with words engraved upon them. Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that will never yours, thief, you have been warned. Beware of finding more than treasure there. Like I said, you'd be mad to rob it, said Hagrid. A pair of goblins bowed them through the silver doors, and they were in a vast marble hall. About 100 more goblins were sitting on high stools behind a long counter, scribbling in large ledgers, weighing coins on brass scales, examining precious stones through eyeglasses. There were too many doors to count leading off the hall, and yet more goblins were showing people in and out of these. Hagrid and Harry made their way for the counter. Morning, said Hagrid to a free goblin. We've got to take some money out of Mr. Potter's account. You have his key, sir? Got it here somewhere, said Hagrid, as he started emptying his pockets onto the counter, scattering a handful of mouldy dog biscuits over the goblin's books of numbers. The goblin wrinkled his nose. Harry watched the goblin on their right, weighing a pile of rubies as big as glowing coals. Got it, said Hagrid at last, holding up a tiny golden key. The goblin looked at it closely. That seems to be in order. And I've also got a letter here from Professor Dumbledore, said Hagrid importantly, throwing out his chest. It's about the you-know-what in Vault 713. The goblin read the letter carefully. Very well, he said, handing it back to Hagrid. I'll have someone take you towards both vaults. Griphook! Griphook was yet another goblin. Once Hagrid had crammed all the dog biscuits back inside his pockets, he and Harry followed Griphook towards one of the doors leading off the hall. What's the you-know-what in Vault 713? Harry asked. Can't tell you that, said Hagrid mysteriously. Very secret. Hogwarts business. Dumbledore's trusted me. More than my job's worth to tell you that. Griphook held the door open for them. Harry, who had expected more marble, was surprised. They were in a narrow stone passageway, lit with flaming torches. It sloped steeply downwards, and there was very little railway, and there were little railway tracks on the floor. Griphook whistled, and a small cart came hurtling up the track towards them. They climbed in, Hagrid with some difficulty, and were off. At first, they just hurtled through a maze of twisting passages. Harry trying to remember left, right, left, middle, fork, right, left, but it was impossible. The rattling cart seemed to know its own way, because Griphook wasn't steering. Harry's eyes stung as the cold air rushed past him, but he kept them wide open. Once he thought he saw a burst of fire at the end of a passage, and twisted around to see if it was a dragon, but too late. They plunged even deeper, passing an underground lake, where huge skeleton and stalagmites grew from the ceiling and floor. I never knew, Harry called to Hagrid over the noise of the carts. What's the difference between a stalagmite and a stalactite? Stalagmite's got an M in it, said Hagrid. And don't ask me questions right now. I think I'm going to be sick. He did look very green, and when the cart stopped at last, beside a small door on the passage wall, Hagrid got out and had to lean against the wall to stop his knees trembling. Glitpook unlocked the door. A lot of green smoke came billowing out, and as it cleared, Harry gasped. Inside were mounds of gold coins, columns of silver, heaps of little bronze canucks. All yours, smiled Hagrid. All Harry's. It was incredible. The Dursleys couldn't have known about this, or they'd have had it from him faster than blinking. How often had they complained how much Harry cost them to keep, and all this time there had been a small fortune belonging to him, buried deep under London. Hagrid helped Harry pile some of it into a bag. The gold ones are galleons, he explained. 17 silver sickles to a galleon and 29 canucks to a sickle. It's easy enough. Right, that should be enough for a couple of terms. We'll get the rest of it safe for you. He turned to Glitpook. Vault 713 now, please. And can we go more slowly? 1 speed only, said Glitpook. They were going even deeper now and gathering speed. The air became colder and colder as they hurtled right round tight corners. They went rattling over an underground ravine, and Harry leant over the side to try and see what was down at the dark bottom. But Hagrid groaned and pulled him back by the scruff of his neck. Vault 713 had no keyhole. Stand back, said Glitpook importantly. He stroked the door gently with one of his long fingers, and it simply melted away. If anyone but a Gringotts goblin tried it, they'll be sucked through the door and trapped in there, said Glitpook. How often do you check to see if anyone's inside? Said Harry asked. About once every 10 years, said Glitpook with a rather nasty grin. Something really extraordinary had to be inside this top secret security vault. Harry was sure that, and he leant forward eagerly, expecting to see fabulous jewels at the very least. But at first he thought it was empty. Then he noticed a grubby little package wrapped up in a brown paper lying on the floor. Hagrid picked it up and tucked it deep inside his coat. Harry longed to know what it was, but knew better than to ask. Go on, back in this infernal cart, and don't talk to me on the way back. It's better if I keep my mouth shut, said Hagrid. One wild cart ride later, and they stood blinking in the sunlight outside Gringotts. Harry didn't know where to run first now that he had a bag full of money. He didn't have to know how many galleons there were to a pound to know that he was holding more money than he had ever had in his whole life. More money than even Dudley had ever had. Might as well get your uniform, said Hagrid, nodding towards Madame Malkin's robes of all occasions. Listen, Harry, would you mind if I slipped off for a pick-me-up in the leaky cauldron? I hate them Gringotts carts. He still did look a bit sick, so Harry entered Madame Malkin's shop alone, feeling nervous. Madame Malkin was a squat, smiling witch, dressed all in mauve. Hogwarts, dear, she said, when Harry started to speak. Got the lot here. Another young man being fitted up just now, in fact. In the back of the shop, a boy with a pale, pointed face was standing on a footstool, while a second witch pinned up his long black robes. Madame Malkin stood Harry on a stool next to him, slipped a long robe over his head, and began to pin it to the right length. Hello, said the boy. Hogwarts too? Yes, said Harry. My father's next door buying my books, and Mother's up the street looking at wands, said the boy. He had a bored, drooling voice. I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think a bully father into getting one for me. and I'll smuggle it in somehow. Harry was strongly reminded of Dudley. Have you got your own broom? The boy went on. No, said Harry. Play Quidditch at all? No, Harry said again, wondering what on earth Quidditch could be. I do. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house, and I must say I agree. No one else you're being yet? No, said Harry, feeling more stupid by the minute. Well, no one really knows until they get there, do they? But I know I'll be in Slytherin. All our family have been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you? Said Harry, wishing he could say something a bit more interesting. I say, look at that man, said the boy, suddenly nodding towards the front window. Hagrid was standing there, grinning at Harry and pointing at two large ice creams to show he couldn't come in. That's Hagrid, said Harry, pleased to know something the boy didn't. He works at Hogwarts. Oh, said the boy, I've heard of him. He's some sort of servant, isn't he? He's the gamekeeper, said Harry. He was liking the boy less and less every second. Yes, exactly. I've heard he's sort of a savage, lives in a hut in the school grounds, and every now and then he gets drunk, tries to do magic, and ends up setting fire to his own bed. I think he's brilliant, said Harry coldly. Do you? Said the boy with a slight sneer. Why is he here with you? Where are your parents? They're dead, said Harry shortly. He didn't feel much like getting into the matter with this boy. Oh, sorry, said the other, not saying sorry at all. But they were our kind, weren't they? They were a witch and wizard, if that's what you mean. I really don't think they should let the other sort in, do you? They're just not the same. They've never brought up to know our ways. Some of them have never heard of Hogwarts until they get the letter. Imagine! I think they should keep it in the old wizarding families. What's your surname, anyway? But before Harry could answer, Madame Malkin said, That's you done, my dear. And Harry, not sorry for an excuse to stop talking to the boy, hopped down from the footstool. Well, I'll see you at Hogwarts, I suppose, said the drooling boy. Harry was rather quiet as he ate his ice cream. Hagrid had brought him chocolate and raspberry with chopped nuts. What's up? Said Hagrid. Nothing, Harry lied. They stopped to buy parchment and quills. Harry cheered up a bit when he found a bottle of ink that changed colour as you wrote. When they had left the shop, he said, Hagrid, what's Quidditch? Blimey, Harry, I keep forgetting how little you know. Not knowing about Quidditch. Don't make me feel worse, said Harry. He told Hagrid about the pale boy and Madame Malkin's, and he said people from Muggle families shouldn't even be allowed in. You're not from a Muggle family. If he'd known who you were, he'd grown up knowing your name if his parents are wizards in wizarding folk. You saw them in the liquid cauldron. Anyway, what does he know about it? Some of the best I've ever seen were the only ones magic in them, from a long line of Muggles. Look at your mum. Look what she's had for a sister. So, what is Quidditch? It's our sport. Wizard sport. It's like football in the Muggle world. Everyone follows Quidditch. Played up in the air on broomsticks, and there's 4 balls. Sort of hard to explain the rules. And what's a Slytherin and Hufflepuff? School houses. There's 4. Everyone says Hufflepuff are a lot of duffers, but I bet I'm a Hufflepuff, said Harry gloomily. Better Hufflepuff than Slytherin, said Hagrid darkly. There's not a single witch or wizard who went bad wasn't in Slytherin. You know who was one. You know who was at Hogwarts? Years and years ago, said Hagrid. They bought Harry's school books in a shop called Flourish and Blots, where the shelves were stacked to the ceiling with books as large as paving stones, bound in leather, books the size of postage stamps and covers of silk, books full of peculiar symbols, and a few books with nothing in them at all. Even Dudley, who had never read anything, would have been wild to get his hands on some of these. Hagrid almost had to drag Harry away from curses and counter-curses bewitch your friends and befuddle your enemies with the latest revenges, hair loss, jelly legs, tongue tying, and much, much more by Professor Vindixverdian. I was trying to find out how to curse Dudley. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but you're not to use magic in the Muggle world except in very special circumstances, said Hagrid. And anyway, you couldn't work any of them curses yet. You need a lot more study before you can get to that level. Right, I need a drink and I will check the chat. Right, see what's going on in the chat, if anything at all. Just the one viewer. Hopefully you are enjoying the my reading. Have a bit more. Hagrid wouldn't let Harry buy a solid gold cauldron either. It says pewter on your list. They got a nice set of scales for weighing potion ingredients and a collapsible brass telescope. Then they visited the apothecaries, which was fascinating enough to make up for its horrible smell. A mixture of bad eggs and rotted cabbages. Barrels of slimy stuff stood on the floor. Jars of herbs, dried roots, and bright powders lined the walls. Bundles of feathers, strings of fangs, and snarled claws hung from the ceiling. While Hagrid asked the man behind the counter for a supply of some basic potion ingredients for Harry, Harry himself examined silver unicorn horns at 21 galleons each, and minuscule glittery black beetle eyes, 5 knuts a scoop. Outside the apothecaries, Hagrid checked Harry's list again. Just you one left. Oh yeah, I still haven't got you a birthday present. Harry felt himself go red. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. Tell you what, I'll get you an animal. Not a toad. Toads went out of fashion years ago. You'll be laughed at. I don't like cats. They make me sneeze. I'll get you an owl. All the kids want owls. They're dead useful. Carrier bows and everything. 20 minutes later, they left Owlglops Owl Emporium, which had been dark and full of rustling and flickering jeweled bright eyes. Harry now carried a large cage which held a beautiful snowy owl, fast asleep with her head under her wing. He couldn't stop stammering his thanks, sounding just like Professor Quill. Don't mention it, said Hagrid gruffly. Don't expect you've got a lot of presents from the Dursleys. Just Ollivanders left now. Only place for ones, Ollivanders, and you gotta have the best wand. A magic wand. This was what Harry had been really looking forward to. The last shop was narrow and shabby. Peeling gold letters over the door read Ollivanders, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. A single wand lay on a faded purple cushion in the dusty window. A tinkling bell rang somewhere in the depths of the shop as they stepped inside. It was a tiny place, empty except for a single splinty chair which Hagrid sat on to wait. Harry felt strangely as though he had entered a very strict library. He swallowed a lot of new questions which had just occurred to him, and looked instead at the thousands of narrow boxes piled neatly right up to the ceiling. For some reason, the back of his neck prickled. The very dust and silence in here seemed to tinge with some sort of secret magic. Good afternoon, said a soft voice. Harry jumped. Hagrid must have jumped too, because there was a loud crunchy noise, and he got quickly off the spindly chair. An old man was standing before him, his wide, pale eyes shining like moons through the gloom of the shop. Hello, said Harry awkwardly. Ah, yes, said the man. Yes. I thought I'd be seeing you soon. Harry Potter. It wasn't a question. You have your mother's eyes. It seems only yesterday she was in here herself buying her first one. 10¼ inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice, wonderful charm work. Mr. Ollivander moved closer to Harry. Harry wished he would blink. Those silvery eyes were a bit creepy. Your father, on the other hand, favoured a mahogany wand, 11 inches, pliable, a little more power, and excellent for transfiguration. Well, I say your father favoured it. It's really the wand that chooses the wizard, of course. Mr. Ollivander had come so close that he and Harry were almost nose to nose. Harry could see himself reflected in those misty eyes. And that's where Mr. Ollivander touched the lightning scar on Harry's forehead with a long white finger. I'm sorry to say, I sold the one that did it, he said softly. 13.5 inches, you, powerful one, very powerful. And in the wrong hands, well, if I'd known what that one was going out into the world to do. He shook his head, and to Harry's relief, spotted Hagrid. Rubius, Rubius Hagrid. How nice to see you again. Oh, 16 inches. Rather bendy, wasn't it? It was, sir, yes, said Hagrid. Good one, that one. But I suppose they snapped it in half when you got expelled, said Mr. Ollivander, suddenly stern. Yes, they did, sir, said Hagrid, shuffling his feet. I saw the beaters, though, he added brightly. But you don't use them, said Mr. Ollivander sharply. Oh, no, sir, said Hagrid quickly. Harry noted he gripped his pink umbrella very tightly as he spoke. Said Mr. Ollivander, giving Hagrid a piercing look. Well, now, Mr. Potter, let me see. He pulled a long tape measure with silver markings out of his pocket. Which is your wand arm? Well, I'm right-handed, said Harry. Hold up your arm. That's it. He measured Harry from shoulder to finger, and then wrist to elbow, shoulder to floor, knee to armpit, and around his head. As he measured, he said, Every Ollivander wand has a core of a powerful magical substance, Mr. Potter. We use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and the heartstrings of dragons. No two Ollivander wands are the same, just as no two unicorn, dragons, or phoenixes are quite the same. And of course, you will never get such good results as with any other wizard's wands. Harry suddenly realised that the tape measure, which was measuring between his nostrils, was doing this on his own. Mr. Ollivander was flitting around the shelves, taking down boxes. That will do, he said, and the tape measure crumpled onto a heap on the floor. Right then, Mr. Potter, try this one. Beechwood and dragon heartstring, 9 inches, nice and flexible. So take it and give it a wave. Harry took the wand and, feeling foolish, waved it around a bit, but Mr. Ollivander snatched it out of his hand almost at once. Marvel and phoenix feather, 7 inches, quite whippy. Try. Harry tried, but he had hardly raised the wand when it too was snatched back by Mr. Ollivander. No, here, ebony and unicorn hair, 8.5 inches, springy. Go on, try it out. Harry tried and tried. He had no idea what Mr. Ollivander was waiting for. The pile of tried wands was mounting higher and higher on the springy chair, but the more wands Mr. Ollivander pulled from the shelves, the happier he seemed to become. Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry. We'll find the perfect match here, somewhere. I wonder now. Yes, why not? Unusual combination. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. Harry took the wand. He felt a sudden warmth in his fingers. He raised his wand above his head, brought it swishing down through the dusty air, and a steam of red and gold sparks shot from the end like a firework, throwing dancing spots of light onto the walls. Hagrid whooped and clapped, and Mr. Ollivander cried, Oh, bravo! Yes, indeed. Oh, very good. Well. How curious. How very curious. He put Harry's wand back into its box and wrapped it in brown paper, still muttering, Curious. Sorry, said Harry, but what's curious? Mr. Ollivander fixed Harry with his pale stare. I remember every one I ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather in your wand gave another feather. Just one other. It's very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. Harry swallowed. Yes, 13.5 inches. You. Curious indeed how these things happen. The one chooses the wizard, remember. I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible! Yes, but great. Harry shivered. He wasn't sure he liked Mr. Ollivander too much. He paid 7 gold galleons for his wand, and Mr. Ollivander bowed them from his shop. The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky as Harry and Hagrid made their way back down Diagon Alley, back through the wall, back through the leaky cauldron, now empty. Harry didn't speak at all as they walked down the road. He didn't even notice how much people were gulping at them on the underground, laden as they were with all their funny-shaped packages, with the sleeping snowy owl on Harry's lap. Up another escalator, out into Paddington Station. Harry only realised where they were when Hagrid tapped him on the shoulder. Got time for a bite to eat before your train leaves? He said. He bought Harry a hamburger and they sat down on plastic seats to eat them. Harry kept looking around. Everything looked so strange somehow. You all right there, Harry? You're very quiet, said Hagrid. Harry wasn't sure he could explain. He just had the best birthday of his life, and yet he chewed his hamburger, trying to find the words. Everyone thinks I'm special, he said at last. All those people in the League of Cauldron, Professor Quirrell, Mr. Ollivander. But I don't know anything about magic at all. How can they expect such great things? I'm famous and I can't even remember what I'm famous for. I don't know what happened when the night my parents died. Hagrid leant across the table. Behind the wild beard and eyebrows, he wore a very kind smile. Don't you worry, Harry. You learn fast enough. Everyone starts at the beginning of Hogwarts. You'll be just fine. Just be yourself. I know it's hard. You've been singled out, and that's always hard. But you'll have a great time at Hogwarts. I did. Still do, matters of fact. Hagrid helped Harry onto the train that would take him back to the Dursleys, then handed him an envelope. Your tickets for Hogwarts, he said. 1st of September, King's Cross. It's all on your ticket. Any problems with the Dursleys, send me a letter with your owl. She'll know where to find me. See you soon, Harry. The train pulled up the station. Harry wanted to watch Hagrid until he was out of sight. He rose in his seat and pressed his nose against the window. But he blinked, and Hagrid had gone. And that's the end of that chapter, end of chapter 5. That's a bigger chapter than I thought, actually. How many pages were that? Wow, a lot bigger than I thought. 66 to page 94. Quite a few pages then. Still got 2 more chapters to read yet, though, guys. Let's just check the chat. See if everyone's doing okay. Oh, nothing in the chat. Hopefully you guys are doing okay. That chapter took me 49 minutes. Wow. I didn't realise it took me that long to read that one chapter. Wow, that's the longest chapter it took. I have to say, reading that chapter, I have to say the biggest thing to me that stood out, I was thinking about the whole book. What was it? I can't remember what it was now. There was something that was bothering me the entire chapter. I just can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, if muggles are not meant to know about wizardry, then why does Hagrid and Harry talk so openly about it on the train? I mean, it's meant to be kept a secret, and yet they're talking about it like in broad daylight with owls and bringing strange packages. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, I would be a bit suspicious. I know it's just a book and just a movie as well, but if they're trying to keep it semi-realistic, at least keep it realistic enough so they don't. Why talk about it in front of people? I don't get that. Personally, I just don't get that. So saying, it was a very good chapter. It was a very good chapter. A long chapter, but a very good one. Hopefully you guys don't mind my really bad, atrocious atrocious reading. And I know my reading's bad. I stumble over my words quite a lot, as you guys can tell while I'm reading. But that will improve in time. And I'm not a fast reader either. I'm quite a slow reader. As you can tell, it took me 15 minutes basically to read that chapter. It's giving me a couple of minutes just to, stretch my neck and whatnot, and give my jaws a rest. Because I've still got 2 more chapters to read yet for this stream. Let me know, guys, down in the comment section if you're watching, what you found most shocking about. Well, don't give any spoilers, obviously. Up till now, let me know what you think is the most shocking thing that you think is in the book. I mean, for me personally, at the moment, it's the fact that they just talk about magic so plain and open when they want to keep it a secret from the muggles. That, for me, personally, is shocking and the most surprising thing. I don't know about you, but that's for me. Now, oh, seems to be going. I know I'm checking the chat. Let's just refresh it, shall we? Nothing in chat. Okay. Let me just take my other thing here. I don't know what I'm saying. Oh dear. Okay. Cool. Right. Let's change the picture, shall we, to something else now. Let's change it to this one here. Right. I swear I'll change it to something else. There we go. Let's have that picture now, shall we? And full screen that. This picture is for the first book, by the way. This picture is for the first book. Alright, how long is chapter 6 then? Oh god, this is actually quite a long one. I think this might be slightly... 26 pages. That's not that bad. 26 pages to read. Then how many for chapter 7? So we have got to read 46 pages. Okay, still got quite a bit of reading to do then. That's actually quite a bit of the book as well, actually, I think. After we read that, we're halfway, just under halfway, I think. Cool. Right. Let's progress, shall we? Chapter 6. The journey from platform 9 and 3/4. Harry's last month with the Dursleys wasn't fun. True, Dudley was now so scared of Harry he wouldn't stay in the same room, or Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon didn't shut Harry in his cupboard, force him to do anything, or shout at him. In fact, they didn't speak to him at all. Half terrified, half furious, they acted as though any chair with Harry in it was empty. Although this was an improvement in many ways, it did become a bit depressing after a while. Harry kept to his room with his new owl for company. He had decided to call her Hedwig, a name he had found in A History of Magic. His schoolbooks were very fascinating. He lay on his bed, reading late into the night, Hagrid swooping in and out of the open window as she pleased. It was lucky that Aunt Petunia didn't come into Hoover anymore, because Hedwig had kept bringing back dead mice. Every night, before he went to sleep, Harry ticked off another day on the piece of paper he had pinned to the wall, counting down to September the 1st. On the last day of August, he thought he'd better speak to his aunt and uncle about getting to King's Cross Station the next day. So he went down to the living room, where they were watching a quiz show on television. He cleared his throat to let them know he was there, and Dudley screamed and ran from the room. Uncle Vernon? Uncle Vernon grunted to show he was listening. I need to get to be at King's Cross tomorrow to go to Hogwarts. Uncle Vernon grunted again. Would it be alright if you gave me a lift? Grunt. Harry supposed that meant yes. Thank you. He was about to go back upstairs when Uncle Vernon actually spoke. Funny way to get to Hogwarts School. Funny way to get to which school? The train. Magic carpets all got punctures, have they? Harry didn't say anything. Where is the school anyway? I don't know, said Harry, realising this for the first time. He pulled the ticket Hagrid had given him out of his pocket. I'll just take the train from platform 9 and 3/4 at 11 o'clock, he read. His aunt and uncle stared. Platform what? 9 and 3/4. Don't talk rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. There is no platform 9 and 3/4. It's on my ticket. Barking, said Uncle Vernon. Howling mad, the lot of them. You'll see. You just wait. All right, we'll take you to King's Cross. I'm going up to London tomorrow anyway, or I wouldn't bother. Why are you going to London? Harry asked, trying to keep things friendly. Taking Dudley to hospital, growled Uncle Vernon. Got to have that running tail removed before he goes to Smeltings. Harry woke at 5 o'clock the next morning, and was too excited and nervous to go back to sleep. He got up and pulled out his jeans, because he didn't want to walk into the station in his wizard's robes. He would change on the train. He checked his Hogwarts list yet again to make sure he had everything he needed. Saw that Hagrid was shut safely in her cage, and then paced the room, waiting for the Dursleys to get up. 2 hours later, Harry's huge, heavy trunk had been loaded into the Dursleys' car. Aunt Petunia had talked Dudley into sitting next to Harry, and they had set off. They reached King's Cross at 10:30. Uncle Vernon dumped Harry's trunk onto a trolley and wheeled it into the station for him. Harry thought this was strangely kind until Uncle Vernon stopped dead, facing the platforms with a nasty grin on his face. Well, there you go, boy. Platform 9, platform 10. Your platform should be somewhere in the middle, for they don't seem to have built it yet, do they? It was quite white, of course. There was a big plastic number 9 over one platform, and a big plastic number 10 over the one next to it. And in the middle, nothing at all. Have a good term, said Uncle Vernon with an even nastier smile. He left without another word. Harry turned and saw the Dursleys drive away. All 3 of them were laughing. I lost where I was. I actually lost where I was. Oh yeah. Harry's mouth went rather dry. What on earth was he going to do? He was starting to attract a lot of funny looks because of Hagrid. He'll have to ask someone. He stopped at a passing guard, but he didn't dare match on platform 9 and 3/4. The guard had never heard of Hogwarts, and when Harry couldn't even tell him what part of the country it was in, he started to get annoyed. As though Harry was being stupid on purpose. Getting desperate, Harry asked for a train that left at 11 o'clock. The guard said there wasn't one. In the end, the guard strode away, muttering about time wasters. Harry was now trying hard not to panic. According to the large clock over the rifles board, he had 10 minutes left to get onto the train to Hogwarts, and he had no idea how to do it. He was stranded in the middle of a station with a trunk he could hardly lift, a pocket full of wizard money, and a large owl. Hagrid must have forgotten to tell him something you had to do, like tapping the third brick on the left to get into the Diagon Alley. He wondered if he should get out his wand and start tapping the ticket box between platforms 9 and 10. At that moment, a group of people passed just behind him, and he caught a few words of what they were saying, packed with muggles, of course. Harry swung around. The speaker was a plump woman who was talking to 4 boys, all with flaming red hair. Each of them was pushing a trunk like Harry's in front of them, and they had an owl. Hearts hammering, Harry pushed his trolley after them. They stopped, and so did he, just near enough to hear what they were saying. "Now, what's the platform numbers?" said the boy's mother. "9 3/4, piped a small girl, also red-headed, who was holding her mother's arm. "Mum, can't I go?" "You're not old enough, Ginny. Now be quiet, all right? Percy, you go first." What looked like the oldest boy marched towards platforms 9 and 10. Harry watched careful not to blink in case he missed it. But just as the boy reached the divide between the 2 platforms, a large crowd of tourists came swarming in front of him, and by the time the large rucksack had cleared away, the boy had vanished. "Fred, you next," the plump woman said. "I'm not Fred, I'm George," said the boy. "Honestly, woman, you call yourself our mother. Can't you tell I'm George?" "Sorry, George, dear." "Only joking. I am Fred," said the boy, and off he went. His twin called after him to hurry up, and he must have done, because a second later he had gone. But how had he done it? Now the third brother was walking briskly towards the ticket barrier. He was almost there, then quite suddenly he wasn't anywhere. There was nothing else for it. "Excuse me," Harry said to the plump woman. "Hello, dear," she said. "First time to Hogwarts? Ron's new too." She pointed to the last and youngest of her sons. He was tall, thin, and gangling, with freckles, big hands and feet, and a long nose. "Yes," said Harry. The thing is, I don't know how to get to the platform," she said kindly. And Harry nodded. "Not to worry," she said. "All you have to do is walk straight at the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Don't stop and don't be scared you'll crash into it. That's very important. Best do a bit of a run if you're nervous. Go now before Ron." Okay," said Harry. He pushed his trolley round and stared at the barrier. It looked very solid. He started to walk towards it. People jostled him on their way to platforms 9 and 10. Harry walked more quickly. He was going to smash right into that ticket box, then he'll be in trouble. Leaning forward on his trolley, he broke into a heavy run. The barrier was coming nearer and nearer. He wouldn't be able to stop. The trolley was out of control. He was a foot away. He closed his eyes, ready for the crash. It didn't come. He kept running. He opened his eyes. A scarred steam engine was waiting next to a platform packed with people. A sign overhead said Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. Harry looked behind him and saw a wrought iron archway where the ticket box had been, with the words platforms 9 and 3/4 on it. He had done it. Smoke from the engine drifted over the heads of the chattering crowd, while cats of every colour wound here and there between their legs. Owls hooted to each other in a disgruntled sort of way over the babble and the scraping of heavy trunks. The first few carriages were already packed with students, some hanging out of the window to talk to their families, some fighting over seats. Harry pushed his trolley off down the platform in search of an empty seat. He passed a round-faced boy who was saying, "Gran, I've lost my toad again." "Oh, Neville," he heard an old woman sigh. A boy with dreadlocks was surrounded by a small crowd. "Give us a look, Lee, go on." The boy lifted the lid of a box in his arms, and the people around him shrieked and yelled as something inside poked out a long, hairy leg. Harry pressed on through the crowd until he found an empty compartment near the end of the train. He put Hagrid inside first, and then started to shove and heave his trunk towards the train door. He tried to lift it up the steps, but could hardly raise one end, and twice he dropped it painfully on his foot. "Want a hand?" It was one of the redhead twins who followed through the ticket box. "Yes, please," Harry panted. "Oi, Fred, come here and help." With the twins' help, Harry's trunk was at last tucked away in a corner of the compartment. Thanks, said Harry, pushing his sweaty hair out of his eyes. What's that? Said one of the twins suddenly, pointing at Harry's lightning scar. Blimey, said the other twin. Are you? He is, said the first twin. Aren't you? He added to Harry. What? Said Harry. Harry Potter, chorused the twins. Oh, him, said Harry. I mean, yes, I am. The two boys gawped at him, and Harry felt himself going red. Then, to his relief, a voice came floating in through the train's open door. Fred! George! Are you there? Coming, Mum! With a last look at Harry, the twins hopped off the train. Harry sat next to the window, where, half hidden, he could watch the red-headed family on the platform and hear what they were saying. The mother had just taken out the handkerchief. One, you got something on your nose. The youngest boy tried to jerk out of the way, but she grabbed him and began rubbing the end of his nose. Mom, get off! He wriggled free. Oh, it's Ickle Rodden getting something on his nosy, said one of the twins. Shut up, said Ron. Where's Percy? Said the mother. He's coming now. The oldest boy came striding into sight. He had already changed into his billowing black Hogwarts robes, and Harry noticed a shiny red and gold badge on his chest with the letter P on it. Can't stay long, Mum, he said. I'm up front with the prefects. I've got two compartments to themselves. Ah, you're a prefect, Percy, said one of the twins with an air of great surprise. You should have said something. We had no idea. Hang on. I think I remember him saying something about it, said the other twin. Once or twice a minute all summer. Oh, shut up, said Percy, the prefect. How comes Percy gets new robes anyway, said one of the twins. Because he's a prefect, said the mother fondly. All right, dear, we'll have a good term. Send me an owl when you get there. She kissed Percy on the cheek and left. Then she turned to the twins. Now, you two, this year you behave yourselves. If I get one more owl telling me you've blown up a toilet or blown up a toilet, we've never blown up a toilet. Great idea though, thanks, Mum. It's not funny. And look after Ron. Don't worry, Ron again is safe with us. Shut up, said Ron again. He was almost as tall as the twins already, and his nose was still pink where his mother had rubbed it. Hey, Mum, guess what? Guess who we met on the train? Harry leant back quickly so they couldn't see him looking. You know that black-haired boy who was near us in the station? Know who he is? Who? Harry Potter. Harry heard the little girl's voice. Oh, Mum, can I go on the train and see him? Oh, please. You've already seen him, Ginny, and the poor boy isn't something you goggle at in the zoo. Is he really, Fred? How do you know? Asked him. Saw his scar. It's really there, like lightning. Poor dear. No wonder he was alone. I wondered he was ever so polite when he asked